So David, welcome to the podcast. If you could just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I am David. I am a tattoo artist. I am a Reiki master, a neo-tantric teacher, a Qigong breathwork meditation coach. I've studied some herbalism, and I am also qualified in star magic healing, which is a form of quantum healing, or the ancient Egyptian energy surgery, whatever way you want to look at it.
Amazing, thank you. So the title of the podcast series is How Did We Get Here? And I think we met on Facebook. I think you're friends with Sally that I've done some work with.
Yeah, I think we added each other on sort of Facebook, and then we had like a brief conversation over one of my posts, and then it kind of sparked a wee bit of intrigue, and then we jumped on a call, and we've done a little bit of work, and yeah, had a nice wee conversation, and then you came to the conclusion that a podcast would be good.
Yeah, amazing. So I think the reason that I reached out is because I think I watched one of your videos or reels or something, and you were talking about your spiritual awakening, and it felt very similar to mine in that it was quite intense.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm really trying to get out of this podcast is to really help people that might be going through one of these fast awakenings, and they might just be feeling quite alone and like, oh shit, what is happening? Because when it happened to me, I didn't know anybody else around me. So are you able to just to kind of start from the beginning? Like, how did your awakening begin? When was it?
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre because like since I can first remember, I always knew that I was here for a reason. Just things in life didn't make any sort of sense. But my life really hit a catalyst when my little brother committed suicide. I was 19, he was 18. It led me going to prison, and that's when I started to actually get some help for what was going on in my life and what had happened in my childhood and stuff like that. So yeah, basically I got some bereavement counselling that helped me kind of get some closure on some things. And then I started to draw again when I was inside. And from there, when I came out, I got the tattoos my little brother wanted as a tribute because I was never interested in tattoos. And from there, I was just holding space for people. When you're in that sort of close setting, it's a very intimate sort of space. You've got, you've got someone who's trusting you. And yeah, it's a bit like being in a barber's or a hairdresser's. It's really one of the few places where people can go that doesn't involve some form of substance where you can actually vocalise what's going on within yourself. So I found myself holding space for people and kind of consciously coaching people from the experiences I had. And from there, I started to basically like heal myself and started to work on myself and acquiring different modalities and stuff like that. When I was 33, I had my spiritual awakening. I watched a trilogy of documentaries and I went to my bed and I woke up a completely different person.
What was it, out of interest?
It was a Zeitgeist trilogy.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, it's 3 very long, very informational sort of documentaries, which just kind of blew my lid wide open. I could see a different way of life, and yeah, there's so much clarity in those documentaries. And then I woke up the next day and completely triggered everybody in my life. They couldn't quite comprehend how this little angry Glaswegian guy became all happy-go-lucky and could just see a better way.
So let's just go back to that. So at 33, where were you and what were you doing?
I was still tattooing.
Yeah.
And I was just basically just being me. I was just a father, partner, and a tattoo artist, really.
And then you watched that documentary.
Watched that documentary.
And then what happened? Like,
there was a catapult into just, like the possibilities of life. Part of the documentary is a guy goes into depth of like the Venus Project, and the Venus Project is basically self-sustainable housing that's set up in such a way that can bring value to everybody's life. It gives everybody like a solid baseline, and then from there they can start to evolve. You know what I mean, we need some form of main structure in life that gives everybody like a strong foundation to build off of. So that for me, and then yeah, I started to go and help some homeless people, handing out soup, money, conversations with people and stuff like that, and trying to help people the best way I could. Take my daughter with me, who was still quite young, but just basically installing into her that like sharing's caring.
So sorry to bring it back to it, but I just really want to tangibly understand. So you were there, you were a father, partner, tattoo artist, then you watched this documentary. And what did it specifically do to like was it something internal that changed? Did it just like was it like an Ebenezer Scrooge type moment? Like what did you have? Did you have like physical sensations?
Yeah, like before I went to sleep, it was like my body was was like in a full orgasmic state, and like I had so much weight lifted off my shoulders because I knew that
Right.
well, what I'd been feeling from a very young age was true. There is a better way of life. There is a better process in which we can live by. And then when I went to sleep and I woke up the next day, it was just like everything that had held me back was gone,
Right, okay.
and I was a completely different person. And yeah, it was really frustrating to, especially my ex fiance, who when we got together, we were basically trauma bonding. It was we've both been in abusive relationships and stuff like that. So for her to then have this happy-go-lucky guy while she was still in the pits of her sort of her pain and stuff like that was really difficult for her. I managed to stay strong for about 6 months, and then basically all the dysfunctional people around about me pulled me back down into my darkness.
And what happened?
Well, I became very frustrated with my situation and with the people in my life. Um, and yeah, like I've been an introvert for quite a long period of my life. I was a selective sort of mute during my childhood, down to trauma and stuff like that as well. So I would internalize everything. I would beat myself up because I couldn't figure out how to communicate with my current partner as to how I now saw life, and
Right.
how beautiful a life we could have if she could surrender to her own darkness and go through that sort of healing process.
And so is that what happened? Did you kind of shut down again because of
Yeah,
yeah.
I allowed the darkness to kind of creep back in, um, and that continued for a few years. It would be slight moments of where I would get like a second wind, and I would start to come back to myself again, only for people to kind of, I mean, it's a bit like the lobster, you know what I mean? The lobster's coming out of the bucket and they all kind of grab you and pull you back under. So, and you understand it when you change, it triggers everybody else. Everybody wants you to stay the same because that kind of shows them up in a subconscious kind of way.
And then what happened next?
What happened next was basically I was just continuing to do what I was doing. I was constantly like studying. I've always been like a history buff. I've always kind of known that like the stuff that we were being taught was false. So yeah, I would continue with documentaries, reading books and stuff like that, and just kind of educating myself. And yeah, just spending a lot of time in nature and stuff. And then when COVID kicked in, I got my first sort of Reiki session done, and I liked it. So I started studying Reiki. I became a Reiki master. I was practicing that for a while, and then I started to look into different sort of cultures and different sort of ways in which they walk towards that sort of enlightenment. I started to study qigong, breath work, meditation, and stuff like that. But like not 100% committing to it. You know what I mean? I was still obviously trying to fix a relationship and have someone who was in the depth of the darkness to see my perspective. I was still obviously playing the father role, and just try to make ends meet. So the real sort of catalyst from there was when my ex fiance was being diagnosed with bowel cancer. And then I went all out with my sort of like healing journey, started to look into herbalism, and yeah, plant medicine and natural sort of remedies and stuff like that. And then we had a plant medicine experience that kind of rocked both our worlds in different ways. It allowed her to release all the suppressed emotions and everything that was trapped inside her, although it was a very horrific ordeal for her. And yeah, the second night, my Kundalini completely blew wide open, and I've never been the same person since.
Was that with the mother?
Yeah, it was Mother Aya. Yeah. So yeah, that was a profound experience. It kind of rattled everybody that was in the room, and yeah, I just refused to go back into my box after that.
And when was that?
That was about 2 years ago
Okay.
during the Lionsgate. Yeah, the powerful portal.
And so where are you now, David?
I am just blissfully content, to be fair. I am continuing to work on myself. I was travelling with a group of healers, but I'd since quit that in order to pursue my own dreams and visions. And doing like group workshops and stuff like that and retreats. That's my aim, and collaborating with other healers who have the same or similar kind of visions.
Because one of the things we were talking about when we had the call was retreat, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
kind of like, I don't want to say New Earth living because it sounds really fucking cheesy, but I guess a lot of us are having similar visions about there's a different way to live than us living in the
Yeah.
Matrix. Do you just want to talk a little bit about because that's how we really connected, wasn't it? I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I had like a vision like
Yeah.
that, and you did as well.
Yeah, so during my studying, I've I uncovered quite a lot of stuff about the shifts in the planet and stuff like that, and the Earth axis tilting, and it led me to Dolores Cannon. Dolores Cannon done 3 books, Conversations with Nostradamus. So upon reading these 3 books and witnessing
So what were the 3 books?
the
Conversations with Nostradamus.
Conversations with
What was the next
Nostradamus,
one?
it's the 3 books. That's those 3 volumes to it.
Right, okay, sorry.
So Dolores Cannon started doing past life regression. She usually done like hypnosis and stuff like that in order to like break sort of smoking habits and whatever else. But she stumbled upon past life regression, and the person in which she was doing it on in the past life was the apprentice to Nostradamus. And Nostradamus clicked onto what was happening, and it created a bridge for them both to communicate. So
Right,
she
okay.
was told to get the Book of the Quatrains and read them back to him. And while she's reading the quatrains to him, he's writing them down and deciphering them.
Go back again to that. Reading the what?
The quatrains.
What does that mean?
The quatrains are basically usually like 4 words, sort of riddles, or codes, and
And is
basically
that in Nostradamus' teachings or was that in her book?
it's in his
Both.
teachings. Yeah.
Okay.
So she's reading them back to him, and he's writing them down as she's reading them. So they're basically working through different dimensional spaces to create these prophecies. And Nostradamus predicts that in 2029 the Earth axis is going to tilt because we've moved into the age of Aquarius, but the planet hasn't quite shifted. But when you look at all government timelines, or their agendas are for 2030, because they need to establish all their power structures before the surface of the planet changes, and that's why we're being hit with so much chaos in a minute. So we need to get to higher level grounds, or we need to go underground, and that's why they're building all their bases and stuff like that. So
Wow. Okay. So what? Because I'm a geologist by background, so
Yeah.
kind of mass extinction's my thing.
Yeah.
I feel like I was learning about it to prepare for the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
My dad was also my dad wasn't very, I say he wasn't very spiritual. Towards the end he wasn't, but kind of probably 30s he was, and it was him that introduced me to Nostradamus, and I used to be like well into it
Yeah.
as a kid. But tell me, like, what is prophesized? I can't imagine from understanding the
Yeah,
past.
so the maps are all going to change. So we are going to go through like a stage in life where the sea levels are going to rise. It's a natural occurrence. It's not global warming. It's just that the planet is heating. It's going through a heating phase. Every 1,000 years we move into a new astrological age, and we're moving from Pisces to Aquarius. That's why we're all getting this download of information, and we're all waking up to ourselves. So we need to change where we live, how we live. And the structures of society have been set up in a way to kind of lead us astray, keep us distracted whilst they run off to the bank with all the money and all the resources. So we have a chance. The Nostradamus always predicts the worst case scenario, and it does that in order for us to then focus our attention on the best possible outcome that we can have. The best possible outcome we can have is creating sustainable communities and getting away from cities, to be fair, because they're really just failed experiments if you look at them.
So what does this, I was going to say utopian, but what does this alternative vision, what could it look like?
Well, we have the capabilities to build using our natural resources around us. We don't have to pay construction companies to build the substandard housing at an extortionate rate. We can plan earth integrated homes, retreats. Pretty much. But you can do it in a more tasteful kind of way that's of a higher standard. And you can also then teach the younger generations on how to build their own homesteads and stuff like that, which was a rite of passage for most men back in the day, which we've had stripped from us, along with many other things, you know what I mean? So we need to learn how to be able to master a full range of skill sets, not just have one. Because we are multi-dimensional beings, we are creator gods and goddesses, so we need to learn how to create again, and part of that is by doing, you know what I mean? We're going to make mistakes, yeah, definitely, but like that's the way you learn. So like we can use earth bag homes. So you can fill up just like potato sacks, you know what I mean? You used to get for the lorries and stuff like that. You can fill those up with rubble. You can fill it up with clay and stuff like that as well. And then basically you just stack them up like bricks and you use barbed wire in between it. And then that allows for movement. So when we get hit with the earthquakes and stuff like that, it gives movement for the building. But if you fill up with clay and then you were to set the structure on fire, you make it a more solid structure. Then you cover it with earth and then you can actually build your own crops on top of the structure. You can have it sun facing so that you can also use it as a greenhouse. You know what I mean? There's multiple different ways you can capture the rain. You can plant it next to running water. You can use a hydro. There's many different ways that we can create sustainable living, which is affordable for people.
So from what you said, we've got 4 years before this happens. So what are you personally doing between now and then?
Well, I was working with a group of healers whose main narrative was building 13 retreat centres all over the world. But after spending time with them and having conversation with them, I realised that their vision doesn't align with my vision. So in order for my vision to come true, I need to start working and focusing on myself and what my vision is. So by doing group healings, not only for individuals, but also for families, allow families to heal and then activate the consciousness within people who have the skill sets to make these things happen. Because I cannot do everything by myself. So you need a collective amount of conscious people who share the same sort of vision and goal.
Okay. So that's what you feel like the path is, because my own journey, like years ago, I was really into like climate activism and sustainability and things like that. And so I went to like a uni where I was studying like advanced energy and architecture studies, and they were showing us how to build sustainably with like hempcrete and like all these different ways. It was amazing, but I wasn't ready for it. It was like, it was at a place called Mahundleth, and it was fab, but the ideology around why they were doing it was kind of wrong, but I knew there was something in it. So what you're saying is that we need people to kind of awaken to this level of consciousness to kind of understand, and then from there kind of gather the people and then kind of like share the skills and then come together in communities to buy the land and create. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we also need to claim our lands back because they've all been stolen from us. Let's be honest, you know what I mean? If you get caught in possession of stolen goods, you know what I mean, you get done wading and abetting, right? So all the lands were stolen off us. So anybody claiming to own the land is basically liable. You know what I'm saying? And it's down to us to, well, we can two choices. So we can continue down the road to hell, or you can start building your own heaven. You know what I mean?
How would you say we claim that? I know in Scotland it's fairly recently, but in England it's 1066 when that happened. Like, it's a long fucking time ago. I know in Scotland it's, after 1746, wasn't it? Maybe a little bit before, but then continued, or well, now really.
Well, that's really down to the collective people. You know what I mean? Like, I can make suggestions, but ultimately it's down to each individual to claim their own sovereignty. And by doing that, you claim your own sovereignty, then you start your own rebellion. You know what I mean? Like, you can get people who want to start a revolution, but a revolution consists of people having to be more violent than the people who are in charge. The politics need to be darker and so on and so forth. So it doesn't really work that way. So the only way that's going to work is by activating yourself to your true potential, and then just seeing how it unfolds. I don't 100% know how it's going to unfold. I just know it's going to work because it's been gifted to me, and everything else that I've done that I've focused my attention on has came to fruition, you know what I mean? So I just need to move in the same direction, and the right components will come into play.
Yeah, that's how I tend to work as well. Like, things just tend to happen, and you just follow it, and you just have to trust. It's a lesson in trust. Sorry, am I really like...
No, no,
like,
no.
And then what about the... That's just how my brain works. It's like,
The minute you start to organise something, it's no longer organic. And when it's not organic, it's not authentic. You know what I mean? And then it becomes like a pyramid system. It's like a power structure. Whereas, like, we've been trapped in a power structure, and the picture on my back is the Vitruvian Man, and it shows you that man has
what
been...
man, sorry?
The Vitruvian Man. Da Vinci's picture.
Oh,
That's
like
the
the
set,
one
yeah.
as well?
Yeah, that's the same mathematical equation as the pyramids. And all the chambers in the pyramids line up to the energy centers in the body. So we've been trapped in a cube matrix. So in order for us to escape this, we need to spiral on up out. So we need to circulate society in the construct of society, rather than being a pyramid system where people position themselves above everybody else and all the energy and money goes to the top. It's got to circulate, you know what I mean? So should we have a monetary based system? No. We should have a resource based economy. Do we have the resources? Is it capable? Is it possible? Yeah. Well, it's just again a case of putting the right minds to work in.
So what does a resource-based economy look like?
Well, every country needs to make themselves self-sustainable. If you look at the reason why we left the EU, is because we didn't want people out with our lands controlling us and telling us how to live. These people, politicians in general, position themselves as middlemen, with traders. You know what I mean? And that all stems back to the Viking rule. Vikings were traders. They would come in, they would invade, rape, pillage, steal all the goods, and then they would go and trade it at their markets and stuff like that. Centralised politics is just exactly the same. Yeah, they just position themselves in the centre, and nothing gets done without their say-so and without their cut. So we need to eradicate.
So you're saying that modern day politicians are very akin to historical Vikings in the way that they...
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, there's nothing really changed apart from the way they dress and the way they talk. But they've only done that because they've stolen everything for the start.
So it's like a veil of respectability over...
Well, when the Vikings invaded, when William the Conqueror invaded, what he done is he then told his generals to move out into the lands, basically claim their territories and change their names. So after a few generations, they would be redeemed as sort of lords and whatever else.
Landed gentry. We talked about that in the last podcast, actually.
Yeah.
My guest Rima, she's half Palestinian, half British, and we're both from she's from Darlington and I'm from Middlesbrough, so like Teesside. And we talked about how William the Conqueror like killed off every single man, woman, and child from York all the way up to like here, and you can feel it in the grids because it was just like an absolute fucking genocide over that winter. They just starved, killed, ran, so nothing was left, and then that was what those forces of what happened, you know, with Culloden, essentially, and then to the Welsh and things like that, and then it was exported as colonialism.
Yeah, and it is heavy energy. If you go to any of these battle sites in Scotland, you can feel it. You know what I mean? If you go to any of these major cities like Stirling or whatever else, as soon as you go off a train or at the car or whatever else, you can feel the energy shifting, the energetic imprints, and yeah, we need to understand like the nature of that energy and how like our frequencies are being manipulated since the darker energy started to take over. You look at the Spanish Inquisition, they came right across Europe, just killing off anybody that was connected to Source, because you can't sell a religion to anybody who's already connected to Source. So like, no, I've already got the channel, mate. Thank you.
And that was what the witch tried. And just going back, like, they didn't just do the harrying of the North here, they stole all the lands, and that's, the Duke of Annick and various other, like, landed gentry. That is stolen from us, and we had the land, and we didn't used to organise our society in the way that we do now. It was kind of a lot more democratic, even though it said that it is, but it isn't. It's like, yeah. What was I going to say about that? So yeah, it's actually crazy how much wealth and land has just been taken from us, and because we've been subjugated for so long. And I think that's what's coming through now, is that we're claiming our power. Whereas, yeah, I think it's especially for men, I think it's a massive thing, because I don't think we realise just how subjugated, because everyone's like following this and following reform, and like there's a word for it, isn't it, where you're just kind of, you're just being swayed, like, because people have lost that sense of power, like, within them, like that, as you said, that sense to source. So when you have that own internal power, and you know what is right and wrong and all of that, and you're really connected to yourself, you can't be fucking swayed, because no matter what is happening around you, you are the stillness in the storm. You are completely connected to God, to the divine great spirit, the Christed energies. You cannot be bought. You cannot be sort of like, you fucking
you're locked in, but also like your connection to source has to be spread out through your brothers and sisters as well. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's just holding space and just showing people what's possible is enough. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like we have like been stripped of our dignity to an extent. You know what I mean? We've had a society based up on the seven sins, rather than the more virtuous way of life. You know what I mean? Lust is everywhere. You know what I mean? Pride is just displayed in ego. You know what I mean? Greed is, I mean, it's evident in people's waistlines for a start, and then when you look at the accumulated wealth, where we're told that the planet's like it's overpopulated, but if you drive a couple of minutes in any direction outside the city, you're just met with vast lands of green. You know what I
especially
mean?
in Scotland.
Yeah.
I actually, even before I was spiritual, I used to go to Scotland, because my ex-husband was Scottish and used to drive around, and I could feel it even then, and I was like, and then you see all the old bothies and things like that, and you could feel like how the people used to belong to the land, and just that sense of, the Highland way was, you can tell me more, but as I understand it, like, they used to welcome in strangers and travellers and open, and then they used to have, like, swords and fight and actually be fucking warriors, men, and just tribal people. And that isn't that long ago since all that. And so I think that's what I used to cry for. And I'd be just in these fucking, grouse, barren landscape full of, like, ruined buildings. Like, and my body remembered that it never used to be like that. It was populated, and it's fucking outrageous.
Oh, definitely. Like the clan systems in Scotland, right? Like the whole of the world lives in tribes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And basically, like the estates were basically the tribal people's sort of home ground. It was a stomping ground. What happened in Scotland was basically after the Jacobites fell, like all their clans get kind of forced down into the central belt, Glasgow, Edinburgh, and stuff like that. A whole bunch of warring tribes got stacked on top of each other, and then they started to fight over like petty little bits of land rather than over their estates and stuff like that. You're then being categorised. You've been told that you can't speak your native tongue, and then they start to move in different cultures. You know what I mean? And then when you add in like Scotland, especially the sectarianism, you know what I mean? You've got the Roman Catholic Church who has come across Europe. They've destroyed the Celtic culture. You know what I mean? So you've got the Irish coming over who are quite dominantly like Roman Catholics. You've got Celtic, the football team that merges in Glasgow. You've got Rangers as well. But when you look at it, that's basically the same religion. It was just kind of tweaked to suit a Horny King who couldn't get a divorce. Yeah, basically he saw his opportunity, saw that there was Protestant movements all over Europe, decided to jump on that, and basically kind of tweaked the religion to suit himself. It is
Who was
based
that?
Henry VIII.
Oh yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
so basically,
Because he wanted a wife.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
So it's the same religion. It's just been tweaked. It's just a power structure. Religion actually derives from the word regulate. So it's to regulate our consciousness into like a power construct. You've got like Catholics who support Celtic when they've just changed the language a little bit. So Celtic should be Celtic, and Protestants shouldn't be getting called Protestants. They've just changed the language because then when you ask a Protestant, what are you protesting against? Well, the Catholic Church, but you're still supporting the same sort of ideology. To an extent, it's just been tweaked.
It's
So
just a thing to get people to fight with each
yeah,
other rather
that's
than a
it.
real.
But it keeps you divided, and football itself it is a form of division for men. Yeah, I mean that's why they call the tables a division, because it's to keep men arguing and fighting amongst each other. Like you're going to fight with that postcode, and then you're going to fight with this postcode, and then you're going on tour. And you look at a football pitch. Football pitch is basically just a battlefield with two opposing teams invading each other's territory, hitting targets, and it's amplified by anywhere between like 40 to 80,000 people who are just taking their daily frustrations out on. Because you're allowed to go through the full spectrum of emotions, you know what I mean? Anger, happiness, so on and so forth. That energy gets amplified up into the, like, because it's a coliseum, it gets amplified up into the atmosphere and it spreads out, and then depending on the outcome of that basic sort of event, that then spills out throughout the city. And depending on whether the local team won or not, depends whether the cells are going to be filled with angry sort of.
But it's not just that; it's like domestic violence and like all
Definitely.
of the ramifications.
Yeah,
Of
because it's amplified by the alcohol, and the alcohol's feminine energy, so men tend to sway towards alcoholism, especially in their relationships and stuff that aren't working. So the alcohol is soothing; it allows them to fall into the abyss to an extent, and to basically let go of the constructs of their physical.
So I'm taking it you don't drink.
No.
How long has it been?
Um, Considerable amount of years. I used to be an alcoholic.
Okay.
Yeah, I started drinking when I moved up to the Highlands when I was about 15. And I
Where did you
probably
live in the Highlands?
my mum and dad moved us up to the Highlands just on my 15th birthday.
Whereabouts did you live?
We stayed just outside of Fort William,
Oh, nice.
Kinlochleven. It's on the West Highland Way, but we stayed all kind of around that sort of area.
It's really beautiful there.
Yeah, but me predominantly, like I was more into like smoking weed. That was my sort of escapism. Started smoking weed when I was 9 years old, but when I moved up north, I didn't know anybody who supplied it. So yeah, the next best thing was alcohol, but it had a detrimental effect in my life. It was very destructive.
Yeah. So it's been a long time since you've had a drink.
Yeah, it brought nothing. You know what I mean? I used to use it as escapism. After my brother and just certain things that happened in my life, you would use alcohol to escape when the relationship wasn't working. You would use alcohol to escape, but then it would cause more problems, and you were trying to escape from. So and who wants to feel like crap?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's Satan's sauce, man. If you're drinking spirits at the bar, devil's waiting for you in the corner.
Yeah, definitely. Because in the shamanic teachings that I teach on my courses, it's like it has its own spirit. You can actually feel it. So I stopped drinking in 2018, pretty much, because I wouldn't have ever considered myself as an alcoholic, but alcohol did control my life. And so I guess technically, because I did go to AA meetings and stuff when I lived in London, but I was always like the last one at the bar, kind of life and soul, like I'll have a dribble, and then I just had this weird, I was going through my Kundalini teacher training, and I just had this weird out of body experience where I was kind of like with a load of directors at work. And you know, when you see yourself,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to be like the late 30s drunk person who's slurring. Because I remember when I first started in that industry, seeing like older women like in that, and I was like, ugh. And yeah, and I was doing this 40-day Kundalini meditation. And I think it was around that time. And then I was like, I'm done. So I gave up like sugar, wheat, dairy, booze. Done. And now and again I'll try it just as like a little experiment of like how it feels in my body, and but you can feel like the spirit of it moving through you. And then the next day, like I'm so used to having loads of energy and feeling really good and just like feeling just like a bit high,
Yeah.
like just on life. But when you have it takes about a week to have your stum now.
Yeah, it does. I just don't like it. I mean, I maybe like if I'm at a wedding or something like that, I'll maybe like toast with like a shandy or something like that. But it's just not for me. I used to love the taste of alcohol. I used to crave it, but I think just once that penny drops, it's no longer worth it. And you see the amount of destruction it's caused.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
most of the police's work is just cleaning up alcoholics. You know what I mean, and we're a nation of alcoholics. Just doesn't matter what part of the island you're on. You know what I mean?
What yeah, I remember that definition from here. They were like, an alcoholic is somebody that alcohol is controlling in their life. And I thought, wow, like just because you don't need to have a drink every day,
Yeah.
people are like, oh well, I don't need to drink every day, I'm not alcoholic. But it's not that. It's like if your life is controlled by it, you are essentially. Yeah, I remember going down into London with the Alcoholics Anonymous. It was just like loads of really like funny gay men, and like, here's the biscuits, and I was telling them about what had happened to me, some like stories, and they'd be like, that's terrible, and I was like, that's just kind of what we do. That's just what, and they were like, oh, but when you're seeing it from them who were like 10 years into sobriety and like reflecting it back, it definitely made me. I didn't stop then, but it did plant some seeds that then when I was, because I think it's one of those things you have to be ready to like anything. Your entire being needs to be ready for whatever. Like you can't push yourself until it's the right time.
Yeah, you can't rush your healing.
No.
But like, yeah, I think once that penny drops, that's it. You kind of know, and when you take a step back, you're going to lose a lot of people. A lot of people who want you to go drinking and partying with them, and the minute you stop doing that, then you become the weirdo, you're the strange one. Why you not taking a drink? It's the only sort of drug on the planet where if you don't take it, then you're deemed as being a weirdo. And that's okay, you know what I mean? But I would much rather know, like, go into a room full of strangers and drink this potion and just wait for people's personalities to unfold and then just hope that you get home alright and you don't end up, you know what I mean?
So are you more fun now at a party or less than you used to be? Or does it depend on the party?
It depends, you know what I mean? Like, for me, like, I'm more into the ancestral sort of stuff. Like, we, as Celts, we never used to drink alcohol. We were mushroom
Really?
takers. The whole story of Christmas is based on magic mushrooms, the Amanita muscaria.
Yeah.
So the red and white mushroom grew underneath the trees. The shamans would pick it from under the trees, hang it over the branches in order to dry out the poisons and toxins in it. And then, yeah, before the winter solstice, they would jump on his sleigh, his reindeers, and drop them down the smoke holes. And then during the winter solstice, which is the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, we as a nation or as a culture would be taking mushrooms, and that's where we would see the ghost of past, present, and future. That's also where Rudolph got his red nose from. It's also it just makes so much more sense. Like the Santa's little helpers is like the sort of beings that you meet when you're on these sort of substances, and the shamans would also drink the urine of the reindeers because it's a more concentrated form of it, and then that's maybe where he saw the reindeers flying. But again, like we would feast on the day after because when you take mushrooms, you need to fast in order to get the best sort of results from it. So we'd be on mushrooms for 3 days, and then on the 24th, when the sun starts to rise again, that's where when we would have our feast. Whereas like the day after that is Saturnalia, which is basically Satan's Day, where the Romans would glorify purging out and doing everything sort of towards the darker necessities of humanity.
So 25th, yeah, I've heard about that before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did actually do a meditation on that last year so that people could enjoy that journey, but without having to take psychedelics. Where I took people on that journey because that idea of bringing back presence was actually bringing presence and kind of visions for the tribe and the clan and things like that. That was the whole idea. But I didn't realise that was actually a Scottish tradition as well. I knew it was Siberian, but I guess if we all were like reindeer shamans, then yeah, of course it would have been culturally the same, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So these compounds naturally grow in our lands. That's what we would take, and that's your connection to spirit. I mean, some mushrooms only one compound difference to ayahuasca, so that's their natural sort of medicine. To be fair,
Yeah, my friend's making some
yeah,
weekend, some fly agaric jellies.
nice one.
What was I going to ask you? So when did like the whiskey culture, like when did alcohol come? Was that when the English invaded, or do you know the history of that?
It's more to do with like the Vikings invading. The Vikings
Okay.
brought more of the alcohol into the system as well as the church and that as well,
Okay.
because it plays in part with religion and stuff like that as well. It's religions are demonic by nature. You know what I mean? They basically it's spiritual terrorism. You know what I mean? So
This is going to be an interesting podcast. I wonder what we're going to have to do on this. I want to just elaborate a bit on this for the listeners if we don't cut this bit out.
it's spiritual terrorism. Like our religion again stems back to the word regulate, and it is to regulate our conscience in a certain way so we can be pitted against each other. If you look at Christianity, it's kind of hosted by the white pope. Islam is by the black pope, and then you've got the grey pope, which is the head of the Orsini family, who basically funded both, and it also stems back to Israel and the Jews and how much they've funded the the spiritual terrorism. But we're being pitted against each other, and we just need to understand that we are all just human beings. We are here to cause effect, and we can either follow our hearts and our values, or we can be led into complete darkness and disarray.
When you talk about Christ consciousness or understand Christ consciousness, how is that different from religion?
Christ consciousness is as a perspective. It's basically just knowing thyself. It's knowing that you are God. I mean, you're having an experience, and your experience is unique to you, but it's happening so that you can learn your lessons and acquire the gifts required to enact God's plan.
And what is your relationship to God? How would you perceive, describe, know, like the spirit?
Source consciousness, is it not? It's basically it's the driving force for us. I mean, that's the reason why we get up. It's the reason why your bodies are lit up. I mean, we are the light behind the vehicle, and when you tap into that, then you kind of step away from the sort of darker nature of society. You know what I mean? You start to live more on values and principles than you do on what's in it for me. It's more of there's sort of three stages. That there's the selfishness, there is the working on purpose, and then there's just getting out the way of everything and just allowing yourself to be, you know what I mean, the expression of God Himself.
And how do you deal with because it's all right talking about the light, but then there's also our own personal shadows as well. So how do you, what's your relationship like with your shadows?
Well, your darkness is born out of protection for yourself. Anger is a gift in order for you to understand your emotional state and when you're being mistreated. It's just the problem is we've not had any guidance on how to discipline our darkness. We've not been given much guidance on anything, to be fair. We're just kind of been dumped in amongst a whole bunch of dysfunctional people in the midst of a darkness, and you've got two choices. You can either descend into the darkness or start reaching for the light. But ultimately what you want to do is you want to discipline your darkness so it works for the light, so it's a tool for the light, because God is not light or dark. God is oneness. It is the completion of all things. It is the full spectrum of light and matter.
Okay, thank you. And what would you say to somebody like earlier on in their spiritual journey who might be just waking up, just kind of at that stage where you know that, because that was the thing for me, is that I knew there was something like greater than myself. I've always known that, but they might be confused, they might be going through like a bit of a dark night of the soul, like not really knowing. Like, what would you say to somebody like earlier on in their journey?
Surrender. Surrender. Just surrender to a higher power. Know that everything's happened for a reason. You're not responsible for your trauma, but you're responsible for your healing. I mean, your traumas and your missteps are not necessarily all your fault. What we've been led astray, and it is down to you to dive into yourself and to heal those wounds. Like, hurt people. So if you're continuing to hurt people, you've still got hurt within yourself that you need to have a look at, and you need to, you know what I mean, you need to bring into healing. Most of the time there's a root cause to it, which you can then tap into. And most of the time it is connected to the inner child. But you cannot love anybody else until you love yourself. And I think the problem that we've got is we are seeking love and validation from exterior things rather than going internal, cleaning up ourselves, holding our stalls, know what we value, what we don't value so much, and living according to that light.
And what were the things that really helped you early on in your journey? Practical things.
Nature, cold water, working out, surrounding yourself, even if you don't have the people like in your direct life, but just find masters and people who have already been through the process and who are already accomplishing their dreams and their visions. Study them, master them, take what works, dump what doesn't, and continue. There's been many ascended masters, many already here on the planet just now, and many still to come. You need to turn yourself into master. You need to master yourself, master your emotions and your feelings. Men have been told to suppress their emotions and feelings, but anger itself is an emotion. It's just lower in the spectrum. In order for us to flow freely, like the feminine is flow, it's energy. If we are too logical and trapped within ourselves, within a construct, we're never going to flow properly. So you need that energy to rise. You need to balance yourself, your emotions, and then be able to utilise them to the best of your ability at any given time. It's not being trapped in the past or worrying about the future. It's just going with the flow and making adjustments when they come.
We actually connected because you kept posting like twin flame.
Yeah.
Posts.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't fucking want to be doing that.
Yeah.
Describe what your understanding is of that.
Well, the twin flame is the feminine aspect that's completely locked in with herself and the higher power. And the divine masculine is exactly the same. But the difference, I would say that's the third stage. Like, what it's going to bring a lot of chaos. You know what I mean? Because you're picking your divine mirror. So for a man, the man's not going to be able to lie to his women and get away with it because she's that in tune with herself that she's completely locked in and she can sense when your body doesn't lie, your words can lie, your consciousness can lie, you can make shit up to fucking, you know what I mean, justify your own sort of cause, but it doesn't work. And the same as where a divine masculine, the female's manipulation will not work, you know what I mean? The sexual prowess will not have the same sort of effect because the man's saw past that. He's broke through lust. He's more in a state of like, well, I understand that my sexual energy is my life force, and this will be protected, and yeah, and so on and so forth. So the female doesn't have that sort of sway over him. So yeah, it's going to be hard work for both. But ultimately, that is those are the stargates when divine couples start coming together and they start to activate themselves and their higher selves and the deep, meaningful ways in which they're supposed to. They're just going to magnetize tenfold, and they're going to activate so many souls. It's going to be incredible.
And how do you think somebody identifies who that person is?
Well, there's many different ways you can do it, but ultimately you want to avoid just going for the chemical romance. So
what is a chemical? That's you put in the What is a chemical romance?
Well, so basically, like most people hook up based on chemistry. They're attracted to someone. There is a chemistry. There's an attraction. There's a magnetic pull. The problem is like we ignore the red flags and the unalignment, so to speak. And what we do is we just go, yeah, this one's attractive enough. I've bagged myself a winner. You start making love to each other. You're getting all these powerful chemicals, oxytocin, melatonin, serotonin, dopamine. You're getting all these powerful rushes when you're having genital orgasms. And then before you know it, you're having a kid, you're engaged, you're whatever else, and then 3.5 years down the line, those chemicals are no longer working the same. You know what I mean? You've not done the work to establish if you actually have a strong connection or whether or not you are just rubbing bits in the dark and hoping for the best. Plain and simple. So, like, the way that you should be doing it is you should be doing all the hard work at the start. You know what I mean? Do we align? Do we see the same sort of values in parenting? Do we have the same values in love? Do we have the same values in career, finances, spirituality, health and fitness? And aligning with those? Because if you're someone who's conscious and awake and you hook up with someone else who's attractive but is dead as a doornail, you know what I mean? They're still in their cocoon phase, then there's no alignment there.
Dead as a what?
Dead as a doornail. It's what it is, but you know what I mean? If you've got someone who isn't awake to themselves and you go into that sort of space hoping that you're going to awake somebody, that's impossible. Yeah. There's no way you're going to do it. I've been in a relationship with someone who was closed off to himself, and the more I tried to let them see my perspective, what else, the more it closed them down. Yeah, so you can't change anybody else. You can't heal anybody else. You can hold space for someone, but that person has to have done a certain level of work. You know what I mean? They have to know who they are. So yeah, I've found like an exercise that I've been starting to use. I've been single for 2 years now. I've had a number of dates and they've kind of been disasters, to be fair, because it's the spiritual game is so toxic, you know what I mean, in the sense that like people they have their awakening and whatever else, and then everybody wants a divine counterpart, but they're not willing to work on their own divinity. They want the fast track. They want the guy that's done all the work, but they're not willing to do the work on themselves. And then you end up in some sort of awkward date where, you know what I mean, you're looking at someone who has potential, but they're not quite meeting all these different sort of marks and stuff like that. So
me and my friend had a joke the other day. We were like, I think we're making ourselves undateable.
Yeah.
Because we're healing that much that if you look out there, especially, I think it might be easier for men because there's a lot of women that are working on themselves, or maybe I'm being a little bit sexist here, but for women, it's like we are doing that much fucking work and we're like really going all the shadow and we're doing it, and it's like we were just laughing the other day. We are making ourselves completely undateable, and I'd rather be there and be celibate and single than fucking lowering myself. That's where I got to with it.
Yeah, you don't want to be just in a situation because if you're just hooking up with someone to fill a void space, you're then closing up that space for your divine counterpart to come in. And I would much rather be with my divine counterpart, maybe having a difficult time as we're mirroring each other, than I would be with someone who's just not on the level, because what happens after you've made love? You know what I mean, where's the conversation going? Where's the driving force? Where he's heading? If you haven't got a clear goal and vision, then you're not going anywhere. You're just going round in circles.
Yeah.
But yeah, like women are more spiritually advanced than men. They mature a lot quicker. And unfortunately, they're just kind of burying their heads in the sand to an extent. And it's not necessarily their fault. They've been led into that trap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when you look at the social engineering of how we've came to this point, you know what I mean, we obviously with the Spanish Inquisition, it came across the continent, destroying all connections to spirit, nature, herbalism, shamanism, the lot. And then you've got the introduction of radio, which then led to the initiation of the First War, which cleansed our continent of millions and millions of souls who were connected to the ancestral ways. And then you've got the introduction of the Second World War. You've got a TV there with these images getting broadcasted that then stirs up another war, and then how many millions and millions of Celtic men throughout the European continent have been wiped out, and then they start to flood us with more technology and foreign cultures that are more stronger and stable than ours are, because we lost our culture. And then you look at the men that come back from that war, they were drinking profusely to avoid the traumas and the pains of post-traumatic stress or shell shock, whatever you want to call it. So they were coming home, they were getting drunk, they were beating their partners up at a complete disarray, and then the women were covering up for them. You know what I mean? And then the kids were seeing that, and then basically they follow in the program. And if you look at the model now, it's the exact same, except we don't have a war. We've got football teams. You know what I mean? And then if your football team doesn't win or whatever else, or life's not going too well, it brings difficulties into the relationship. So in order for us to change the trajectory of humanity, we need to heal man and women.
And then we also have like feminism as well as an issue. It's like we thought we were gaining our power, but actually what we did is just, is it emasculate the men?
Feminism isn't actually feminism. Feminism is actually toxic masculinity. It's just like we both have both polarities within us. And basically, like masculinity and femininity are like the north and south poles. So when one polarity goes off a balance, the other one has to move to counteract it. So what's happened is women have started to come into more of the masculine role. Again, that was initiated in the wars, where the women working in the factories and stuff like that. And then it's continued on, and then you've got the introduction of like Thatcherism and stuff like that and whatever else, where all women can do these jobs. Women can do anything that men can do. Women have bigger brains. They're more in tune with the wisdom and the spirituality and stuff like that as well. But like a woman can't do what a man does, in the sense that a man gets up and he goes to work, he builds the roads, he builds the buildings and stuff like that as well. Women can do it, but they're not built to do it. Women are magnetic beings, men are electric. Men are doers, women are attractors. So women need to learn how to harness their magnetism and be in that, but you need a certain amount of strong masculine men that can hold space in order for the sacred feminine to come into her own, and by doing that. So so what I would suggest is, like, if you look at politics, you know what I mean, you've got the House of Parliament, you've got the left and the right arguing amongst each other in there. Well, why is it not the masculine and the feminine? Why have we not gathered like the most intelligent minds in both sexes, and like basically have a long hard look as to what each sex actually needs in order to evolve? And then the discussions that are happening in that building should be about, like, well, how do we create a better society, a better community? You know what I mean? Like, actually having like true voices that represent the people and represent what women need and what men need. Because like you see on the internet all the time, you see like guys slating off women and women slating off guys, and there's no getting us anywhere. You know what I mean? We need to look at the fact is we both need each other. You know what I mean? Life is better when you have someone to love and someone loves you. Definitely, it eases the burden, but also it's a superpower as well. Because if you know that somebody loves you, you know what I mean, and they're trusting in you, that helps you shift through gears and stuff for that as well. It makes you a more powerful, sovereign human being. And there is nothing better for a man than to play his protector role. There's nothing better than a man to be in his masculine role, but we've lost the rite of passage, same as women have lost the rite of passage. We don't have that.
That's what I want for my son. That's what I desire for him, because he's getting to that age now. He's like 11, and in the tribes, he would leave me now and go with the men and go through that rite of passage to be a warrior. And one of the men who's on my shamanic training, he's gonna in what used to happen, I can't remember the exact name of it, you probably know, but it comes from ancient times. And the men would take the boys out into the wild and they would kind of like go for a vision. And I think 40% of them didn't come back, because it was like the warriors came back and the boys were left.
Yeah.
And the mothers used to kind of like give them up. And it's like, there's just this thing where I think a lot of mothers now, we cling on to what we want to keep our sons, and actually it's a fucking work, because I see it and it's like, gotta let them go.
Yeah.
I want my son to be able to go through this. So I'm looking for something that can someone help him with his rite of passage, because his dad's amazing, but he's not necessarily aligned with this stuff, you know? And I think for women as well, like, I know I am much happier, softer, just like when I can just fucking relax and be my feminine. But because the systems and the structures and just like life, it's like sometimes you have to fucking be in your masculine just to get by, you know? And it's like, yeah, like that's what I hope for the future, that my children, because I've got one on the beach, that they can be able to be how we used to live. That's my hope for the future anyway.
Yeah, but the more you come into your divine feminine, the more that you're showing your son that's the kind of woman that he wants to be with.
Yeah.
The issue we've got is the system destroys men, and there is an element of women who use their kids to destroy men as well. If a relationship doesn't work, like most of them don't, because again, it's formed on the chemical romance. Men need boys and boys need men. You know what I mean? It's a rite of passage, the same as women need girls and girls need women. You know what I mean? It's how we also better ourselves as well. When you're teaching someone, you're learning more at the same time as well. So, like, each human being has 4 different archetypes. You've got your lover, you've got your warrior, you've got your magician, and you've got your sovereign. So you need to develop your lover, your warrior, and your magician in order for your sovereign to stand up. Now, each of these archetypes has a light and dark side. So for us, we need to start tapping into that. You know what I mean? We need to develop ourselves as warriors. Like, if you look at the school system, right? If the school system was set up for society, they would be teaching people how to meditate, how to do yoga, qigong, breath work, martial arts. Because if you teach everybody martial arts, then you instantly eradicate bullying. You know what I mean? Because if everybody can kick everybody's ass, you know what I mean? It's not happening. Then you've got like a master that's coming to the school who's disciplining the kids and the girls as well, because I believe girls should be getting taught martial arts as well, because if you look at the current sort of culture as well, where we're stealing and siphoning each other's energy, whether it's mood hoover in the room or whether it's being a rapist or a paedophile or whatever else as well. Women need to be able to defend themselves. Why they're not being taught how to defend themselves? It should just be common practice. We should be made as self-sufficient as quickly as possible. And then from there, it's a case of holding space and it's lighting up a path. And that individual, regardless of its age and its gender, is going to decide in the direction in which it goes on their own life choices and their own purpose. You know what I mean? If you try and force someone to live a certain way or whatever else, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? It's got to be, you know what I mean? It's got to be a certain element of free will. It just has to be free will over the board, to be fair. But we've been narrow-gated into this sort of like minor construct that basically strips us of our sovereignty and basically tells us we're deficient. Well, if you don't like surpass the school requirements and you're labelled a dosser, you're no use to society, and then you're walking around with that for the rest of your life. Now, what right do these people have to put that pressure on like a 14, 15-year-old kid preparing for exams? Like, this is a decision, this is going to determine how your life's bollocks. You know what I mean?
Well, it's even with my daughter. My daughter's 8, she's 9, a couple of weeks. And at the beginning of term, like, we just had all these messages about Ivy's academic. I was like, she's fucking 8. And in the end, I kind of wrote in and I was like, she had a really shit year last year. Like, me and my husband got divorced. She lost her grad. Like, she literally has had a really difficult year for a little girl. And like, my concern is her emotional well-being. I've already written into the school to tell them what's happened. I'm telling you now personally, her academic achievement is really not my concern. Like, that she's safe and she's cared for and that, and then she changed it tune. But I just thought it's absolutely crazy. Like, in year 2 they have SATs in England. I know what it's like in Scotland, and so they're trying to put pressure. My son's just had his SATs, but I said to him, do not care whatever. I'd forgotten about them. I was like, it doesn't fucking matter. And it's like, we're given maths tutors here, or we're given like tutors for the things that we're not necessarily good at, but actually what we want to be doing is encouraging the things that we're good at, because they're the things that we're going to need, not kind of making a big deal about the things we're not good at, because that's not our path. Our path is the things that we excel and lights us up. And yeah,
so if you have kids tapping into themselves, being able to work the full spectrum of their emotions, to be able to express themselves when they're not feeling well, able to defend themselves so they feel strong within themselves, and you teach them how to interact with each other and how to express themselves through the arts, music, whatever it is that you decide you want to do, whether it's painting, so on and so forth, and then you allow the individual child or young adult, whatever they decide to then know themselves to then know what it is that sets their souls on fire, and then they can just choose that avenue to go down in the forms of education, rather than spending all this money and all this time putting everybody through the mince grinder to make them dysfunctional or in debt. You know what I mean? If you just create like a haven, a sort of space for people to nurture themselves. You know what I mean? Like, when you plant a seed, you normally like plant it in like a fresh pot, you put it in the sun, you nurture it, and then when it starts to bloom, you play frequencies to it, whatever else you're doing. You know what I mean? It's going to grow and it's going to become a healthy sort of seedling. But if you're just forcing people into environments that are not comfortable, you know what I mean? Like, you know yourself, if you do the best by your child, you raise your child to well mannered, to understand themselves, so on and so forth. The minute they go into high school and they get that soup, you know what I mean? All it needs is one contaminated ingredient and the whole pot's screwed. You know what I mean? So how many kids have been led astray by dysfunctional people within that space? But if you've got an individual who decides, like let's say for instance, they want to do geology or whatever else, they know that that's their passion, they can just go straight into that, and then they can navigate whatever else comes up for them when it suits them. You instantly free up so much time, money, and resources.
Yeah, school's a difficult one. Like, I would love to homeschool if I could, but I can't. Like, I just don't have the resources. I know Haywood does, but I don't know if you've ever. There's a book by a guy called Russell Means. He was a Native American actor, and he wrote this book called "If You've Forgotten the Name of the Cloud, You've Lost Your Way."
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote about the culture that he was brought up in, because he was brought up by the native people. He was part of the Lakota tribe. And I have like past life connections to them, and I read it and I fucking cried my eyes out, because they didn't have schools, and that was the biggest thing. They built their own longhouses and they lived together tribally, and so the smaller kids would be taken care of by the older children and the grandmothers and the grandfathers and things like that. And so they had this beautiful way of like the smaller children, like every month they would call it like a giveaway. So the older children would give away the presents so that the little kids knew that they were going to receive, but then the older kids knew the kind of benefit of giving. But he said that the thing that really screwed up their culture, was obviously it was all the land grabs and the take and the, but then it was the schools. Many of them were taken out of their families and just thrown into these disgusting schools where there was hideous abuse. Loads of them disappeared and just awful. But then also World War II, where they enlisted and they came back, and he said that when they came back, it was like their souls were gone. So not only did it happen to our people, like it seemed to happen like culturally across the world as well. Like that war, just
Yeah, well, it has ripple effects, so we're all resonant beings.
Yeah.
So when you create that amount of mass concentrated negative evil energy, it has a ripple effect, and that's why we're seeing what's unfolding in the world right now. Is like, and we've got a camera pointed on their narrative rather than all the pluses and benefits that's happening to life. So always seems darkest before it's dawn. Well, we just have to see through it. We need to see, like, again, like the North and South Pole, there's negative and positive energy at play, and the way that they're orchestrating it is so that the Earth's surface is more negative, and that's why we need to be doing the work on ourselves. We need to be clearing ourselves and being a resonant frequency for a higher dimensional plane, because like the planet is like a cell. It's a living organism, and just like any sort of cell, like we are like human beings are like good and bad bacteria on the surface. That if the bad bacteria and the virus is over consuming on the surface and causing too much havoc, the cell is going to mutate in order to shake it off. And basically that's what's going to happen if we don't sort of like get to work on ourselves and we start to elevate the mood and the surface of the planet. It's the volcanoes, the earthquakes have already started. Unless we kind of hone in on that and we start to bring in more positive vibes and intentions. Yeah.
This is like Ghostbusters too.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, like movies and stuff like that, they're all sort of like premonitions, aren't they? Like, they've all been put into our subconscious for a reason, because all these beautiful directors who are trying to direct consciousness in a better way, they're still using the means of media, but they're just far more intelligent with planting these little seeds in. But yeah, like it is kind of like Ghostbusters too, where like water is memory. Like your body's 8% water. Supposed to be 8% water. The planet's 8% water. Now, the moon arrived about 10,000 years ago, which started to affect us in different ways, and that's when the darkness really started to take over.
So I think you don't do any moon rituals then.
I do not. I do
Neither
not.
do I.
But good luck to everybody that does, you know what I mean? But the reason that people are called lunatics is because the lunar cycles affect us. They affect men and women world over. More so women, because women obviously get plunged into their periods and stuff like that, and according to moon cycles and whatever else. But that affects us in certain ways. Like the Rockefeller Foundation changed the tone and frequency of the planet right before the Second World War, which disconnected our heart centres. And then they brought in all this processed food that disconnected our stomachs and stuff like that as well. So we're intoxifying the neural system in our gut, which we need for clear thinking in the brain and stuff like that. So we need to reattune ourselves in order to be picking up these higher frequencies and then being the resonant tone for whatever sort of environment you go into. You know what I mean?
So just going back before I made the joke about Ghostbusters 2, I just want to be really tangible because a lot of these concepts, it's really important that we kind of like pin them down to exactly what we mean. So what you're saying is that if we enhance our frequency, change our frequency through the food that we eat, the environments that we're in, our connection to nature, the work that we do in ourselves, breath work, yoga, qigong, shamanism, energy work, we can change the frequency of the planet or stop whatever's happening to affect like volcanoes and earthquakes and things like that. Can you just really...
We can limit it because
okay.
basically the Earth's surface is going to change regardless because of like you look at carbon dating and stuff like that. There's a powerful clip by Randall Carson who basically goes on and says like we are hitting a point in humanity where it's going to bottleneck. You know what I mean? We are, you know what I mean, going to lose a vast number of people, but we can limit that. You know what I mean? How fast the change happens, we can limit that by changing the frequency of the planet.
So how does us changing our frequency affect volcanoes, earthquakes, things
Because
like that?
we're all connected, we are all nature, we are all from the same source of energy. We are an expression of Gaia and God.
Okay.
We are both, and we need to like harness both these energies, and we need to ground them. Like people think like spirituality is like you want to go up into the cosmos, but it's no. What you're trying to do is you're trying to open up your crown and bring more of your higher self down into your body so that it can experience this plane and flow freely.
So if people are out there doing moon rituals, things like that, how is that going to affect the frequency?
Well, the moon was the first sort of infiltration of the feminine. I mean, the female was divinely connected to Gaia, and by changing the 13-month cycle to 12, and then from having like 13, 28 months, then you've got this kind of scattering of days and stuff like that as well, which throws us all at a rhythm with the planet. I mean, so that's something that humanity has to re-establish, the 13 moon cycles and the 13 constellations and stuff. And that then affected women, and then women were then infiltrated by the darker sports, you know what I mean? Like the draconians and stuff like that. And then they were utilised to, yeah. So like the Fallen Garden of Eden is it's not a place, it's a frequency. I mean, heaven is a frequency, it's not a place. And when the female like causes the ejaculation of the male, that's eaten from the tree of wisdom. You know what I mean? The nervous system is the tree of wisdom. So by that happening, then that caused man to fall from grace, and then he became a lower level individual. And then the dark energies worked on them and turned man against women, and we've been having this battle ever since. So in order to restore that, we need to harness our sexual energy, raise the Kundalini energy, which is the feminine energy that's been suppressed within us through school and dysfunctional people. We don't activate the right hand side of our brain the way that we should. That is where all our creative genius is. That's what school has been engineered for. It's to suppress you of your creative energy and just to make you like a, you know what I mean?
A robot slave.
Definitely.
Slave to the system.
Yeah.
I am going to bring in just about the moon because one of my mentors who was on my shamanic training the person that I did my shamanic training with first was actually false light, so it was a bit of a learning curve, should we say. But one of the mentors on there, she's always been like a little bit, or always was like a little bit ahead in her kind of spirit. And so she was telling us about the moon, and it was something I just wasn't ready for it, because it would have been such a big part of my awakening. I was outside like banging my drum and worshipping and all of this. But a seed was planted, and that's one of the things that I bring to my teaching is, look, when I'm like really in teaching mode and everything's channeling, I'm like, please take what resonates and leave the rest, because some people might never be ready for this, but this is my truth and this is my teaching. It's up to you whether this kind of lands, but don't like just take it or not. It's up to you. And anyway, we all got COVID in probably 2021 or something, and then I took my son, who was really spiritual. He's got the same human design as me. He's lush. And we went to see Moonfall, and then we were both like, fuck. And you know how you were saying they plant the seeds of the truth in the movies, and we came out and we were like, God, we're really scared. And then I saw it, and once I saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's just like what's the bloody in Star Wars, the death. It was just like, and I was like, oh, I see it. And then that was it. And then I was like, no, Mum knew which was for me. And yeah, and and then I journeyed with it. I'm going to take this on a shamanic journey. And it was one of like, sometimes when I'm journeying, things are like a little bit, I don't get that much, but this was like full technicolor vision, proper gnosis vision. And I was in my tent outside. I used to have this ceremonial tent and I journeyed. So I was like, please tell me the truth about the moon. And I was shown, because I'm deeply connected to the planet Venus, planet of the divine feminine. And it was Venus that showed me. She came in this just beautiful, like white, silvery. And she's like, I'll show you the history. So she showed me that the moon was initially this Christed being. And I don't know where it had come from, but it was really beautiful. But then it was basically taken over, and then there's this false lunar matrix, and now it's been siphoned and it's used all of this stuff. And I was like, so a lot of what people have been telling me is true. And she's but you can connect to the moon, you can connect to the primordial essence of the moon, like you can connect to the primordial essence of pretty much everything. Like a lot of things on the earth have been distorted, but as long as you're really clear with your intention, then you're fine. And so a lot of the women that I work with, other people, and I'm like, it's fine to connect to the moon, but you have to be really clear, because you do not want to have that false lunar matrix. Because I used to be really affected by the moon, like my cycles were connected to the moon, and I'd feel fucking crazy. And now I'm like, I see it and I'm like, nah, I'm just not engaging. And so I don't even know. Like people are like, oh, it was a full moon the other day. I haven't a clue. I'm just disconnected to it. It's there and I kind of observe it, but I just go about my day and that's that.
Yeah, definitely. It has a massive effect, and all major sporting events kind of happen around about full moons and stuff like that as well. Especially like boxing events and stuff like that. Whenever there's like a violent sport on in a full moon, it increases rate and violence by about 30% for about 2 weeks. So yeah, it has a massive effect. Many people believe that they harness the energy through the grids and it gets transported up to Saturn and then projected over to the moon and then back down onto us during the full moon. But again, like there's one thing saying it, there's another thing to know it. You know what I mean? But when you look at the moon, it doesn't spin. Our gravitational pull should be sending into a pinball frenzy. The mathematical equation of it, again, there's too many crazy synchronicities. I believe it's a firewall that's prevented us receiving like Christ consciousness frequencies, but now we've moved into a certain part of the universe that no longer has the same amount of power, and there's many battles that have happened for the moon, and they will continue to happen until we've ridded this planet of the darkness that no longer needs to be here. We're always going to have suffering on the planet because it's a school. And sometimes you need to suffer in order to learn. But you can alleviate the amount of suffering that happens. This planet doesn't have to be to the extent of what it is. We don't have to allow these people to control us in the ways in which they're doing so. They're basically turning us all against each other. Makes it easier, divide and conquer. So yeah, unity is the new consciousness. It's how do we unify the divine masculine and feminine within ourselves. And then how do we do that within society? How do we do it within our relationships? And that's the most pivotal part. And then raising, so most of it's in the kids. You know what I mean? And that's why there's such a grab for our kids. They make us so busy, so distracted. We need to send our kids to school. We're working hard doing jobs that we don't really want to do in order to provide, to be taxed to death, to be that exhausted when we get home and we don't have the time and the energy to pour into our kids. Yeah, I mean, we leave it to the state to do it. And all they're doing is to create a bigger state for us to clean up.
So, just to summarise, what is your vision of the future?
Reclaiming the mountains, building self-sustainable retreats, healing centres, education centres, whatever you want to call them, and communities round about that as well. Earth integrated, where we learn together how to build these things that where we're not destroying the environment doing so. It's a rite of passage. We need to establish, how to connect to our essence and to the planet and to cause the least amount of damage while we're here as possible. Make it more sustainable for not just our kids but our grandkids, because we can steal from our grandkids to feed our kids, but ultimately we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So we need to come together and we need to start putting our creative thoughts and ideas, to task, because if we don't, then we already know the trajectory in which humanity's going in. So why not come together and take a chance on yourself?
And for the people that are feeling inspired, like what would you recommend that they start doing? Just having these conversations with other kind of open-minded people, like
Yeah, and take a deep dive into yourself. Also, like self-reflection. You know what I mean? Yeah, what do you need to heal within yourself? What's holding you back? Where can you level up? What do you want to learn? You know what I mean? Like we've all got gifts and skills. Every single human being. There is not one person above or below you. You know what I mean? We came here to experience life. We came here to explore the potentials for life. And we can't do that if we are taking orders from people who do not know us, who do not care for us. And yeah, we need to tap more into the virtuous way of life than more the sinful way of life. We need to breathe. We need to allow ourselves the chance to make mistakes, to figure out along the way, rather than beat ourselves up and disable ourselves before things have even unfolded or came to fruition. The answers are at the end, not during the process.
okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being my
My
guest
pleasure.
today,
Thank you for
David.
having us.